Buenos días. Continuamos con las actividades del Día de la Animación.
Good morning and welcome to this Day of Animation of the Autonomous Region of Madrid. And today we have Ramón Giraldez, someone who is a passionate of the industry and of the artistic part of the animation and everything that has to do also with the technical aspects of animation. And he's going to do a presentation for us which will be realistic and aware about the effects of artificial intelligence and the latest technical innovations we're going to have to work with. Thank you very much, and thank you, Ramón.
Hola, ¿se me escucha?
Can you hear me okay? Thank you, Manuel, for having invited me to come to the Academy. So today, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence, which is most likely the trending topic of the last year, the elephant in the room. Everyone is talking about it. So what I wanted to present to you today is not so much a technical talk, because that could take hours. And I think there's people who will be much better talking about that than I am, because to give just a technical talk is not my strength. But what I want to do is just to talk about, in general aspect, how these models work and what could be the applications for the industry. I would like to understand a bit what's AI and how it can affect us, how it's affected us in already and how it will. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. I didn't want to look for a picture of myself in the system, so I decided to ask the artificial intelligence for a picture to see what it would throw back at me. And as you know, AI analyze text or the prompt that you give them. So you would expect that if it's intelligent, you go to internet, you'll find a picture of myself, but it can't do it because it's a closed system. It has no access. Many of them currently can't just do browsing. So if we do, it's decided I am a baker. I work as a baker, making cakes, and he thought Baker Studios, Able&Baker Studios producer, well, it has to be a baker. So that's the association he made, and he threw back this picture. So I decided to give more information about it, and I obtained this. I gave him more details about myself. Obviously, I didn't give him a physical description of myself because I know what I look like. And more or less, he got the dog right. My dog is somehow similar to this, but it took on certain assumptions depending on what I said to it, and he said a Spaniard. Okay, the typical Spanish is this person. Okay, we imagine that this is a typical Spanish person. It turns out that everyone working in animation has a beard. It's decided so, misdecided that, and it gives me this look because the animation is really important. So he thinks animation, so it's an animation image. But this is me, as you can see. So let me just speak briefly about myself. I focus on thinking. That's my main job, to think. And what I do as technical director and consultant and also producer is, well, I think, how can I do a production? What tools, what methods am I going to use for the production? I am good at making up puzzles. I've got different pieces for different processes, and I'm good at putting it together to create a production process that is as efficient as possible. That's mainly my job. And one of the things that I would like to say is that this is a very interesting topic, and maybe you see me a bit about the bushes a bit. If I do that, you just yawn, and I will realize straight away, and I'll move on to the next topic, okay? So let's talk about humans and technology. let's start with the basis. So how we are specialists at using things without thinking about the consequences. That is something that humankind has been doing for many, many centuries. Some examples. Radiation without protection. I don't know if you know that, but we even had radioactive chewing gum because that was the best of all. We know now that that's not what's best for us. Or DDTs, CFCs, mercury in odontology, tobacco, social media, and artificial intelligence. And these are just some of the examples that we have decided to start doing things without actually thinking in a timely fashion what's bad about this, including asbestos as well. So does this mean these technologies are bad? AI, is it bad? No, it's not bad in itself. What's bad is how we use technologies. Artificial intelligence is not an enemy, it's a reality. Nowadays, it is a reality. We can't prohibit it, and I'll explain later why we cannot forbid it. What we have to do is regulate it and understand it. As I said, the social media have their negative side and their positive side. The thing is that we start using them. In fact, many of the things that we use on the social media is now a topic of debate because of how it's used for artificial intelligence. But social media is not bad they are not bad in themselves. Radioactivity is not bad in itself. It has some useful purposes and others that are not appropriate. Even a nuclear bomb may be good. If there's a meteorite coming towards us, I want, I don't know, NASA or whoever to make sure that they have a nuclear bomb to make sure that the meteorite doesn't hit us, the asteroid. The problem is people use it for the wrong purposes. So, technological revolutions that we've had in the history of art. In the arts, we've also experienced this. We've had many processes and technological evolutions. These are some of the most recent ones. But for instance, when the oil was invented in the 15th century. So these technologies brought in questions, doubts about the elimination of prior techniques. For instance, when the photography came about, they thought it was going to be the end of portrait or the end of painting. Well, no. If you have got a camera and I can take someone's picture, I don't need a portrait. Or cinema, that it was going to be the end of theater, because why would you go to the theater to watch a play if you can be more comfortable and the cinema is much more spectacular? And people thought, well, maybe it's the end of theater as we know it. But the last time I checked, there's still plays around. TV, they thought exactly the same. Television is coming. What's going to happen to the cinema? Is this going to be the end of filmmaking? No, it wasn't. One of the great revolutions of the last few years, the computer graphics. We all remember what a revolution it was when we moved on from normal traditional animation to 2D. Does that mean that's the end of 2D because we're going to have computer graphics? No, people are still doing 2D animation. So this is not the end. So this just gave us tools that helped us work when producing a film in this case. Photography and digital video, the boom of Instagram, and knowing that everyone would have access to a camera, they'll be able to record digital videos. Well, it's the end for photographers. It's the end for everything. Anyone could make a movie because they have a camera, or anyone can take pictures because they have a camera. That's not, in my opinion. Even here, we have someone who's a photographer as a profession. So the digital era, the smartphones, the social media, the beginning of the end. As I was saying, this democratization was something that, well, they believed. Will we stop creating content? No, we didn't. And then AI is here, and we think, okay, this is the end of the industry. That's the end for the industry. That's it. Anyone from their sofa will be able to make a movie. I don't know what you think, but I don't think that is gonna happen. AI is not the devil. Artificial intelligence is not the devil. We just need to understand the types of AIs that we have and different uses that we can give it to that artificial intelligence. So definitions of AI. So we have the definition of the Spanish Language Academy that says it's a scientific discipline that creates IT programs that execute operations similar to the human brain, such as learning or logical thinking. There are many people that are questioning this definition. They believe it's a bit limited. So I asked the best person to ask at the moment, which is ChatGPT. Everyone believes whatever ChatGPT says. And it says, artificial intelligence is a branch of computing that focuses on the creation of systems, programs, and algorithms able to carry out tasks that, if carried out by a human being, will require intelligence. Those tasks including learning, reasoning, problem solving, perception, voice recognition, decision making, and natural language understanding. Go into the decision making. Think about decision making. I'll talk about that later. AI is based on the use of data, algorithm, and mathematical models to improve its performance in these tasks as they acquire more and more experience. So AI can acquire experiences. That's one of the important things that we have to consider and debate. I guess most of you have heard about deep learning, machine learning, artificial intelligence. They are not different things. They are, artificial intelligence nurtures from machine learning and deep learning in order to work. It's part of a whole, we could say. We cannot say this is machine learning and this is separate. These are concepts that encompass and are complementary and encompass each other. So let's talk about the different types of AI that we have. We tend to divide it into two groups. One based on capacities or capabilities, and the other based on functionalities. Based on capabilities, well, at the top, although I can read it, I can't, we have the narrow AI, which is very limited when thinking about what it can do. An example that you have is Siri. Siri has a very specific training to do certain functions. If we take Siri out of the environment, it doesn't know what to do. It's been thought to do very specific things. This type of narrow AI is what many systems are going to be based upon, and many of the systems are based on this type of AI at the moment. Then we have the general AI, which starts thinking about more functionalities, includes more functionalities. It tries to open the spectrum, but leaves out something that we can see at the bottom, which is the super AI. The super AI is an AI that may have even understanding on emotions. We want it to be, well, we've seen it on the films, science fiction films, an artificial intelligence that behaves like a human and may even consider itself a human. They may even think about deep philosophical concepts about its existence, very much into science fiction, which we're really far from still. Why? Because AIs, although I do not want to go into technicalities, they use neural networks to try and copy our brain, and our brain has a huge amount of connections, so infinite that machine can't replicate it at the moment. There are so many, and many of the systems what they use are shortcuts or efficiencies because they are not able to replicate our brain. So they use other systems or shortcuts to try to do that, to solve that. If we base it on functionalities, we have the reactive AIs, which is basically they know a set of processes and they know how to react to them. Deep Blue, the AI that play chess, what it knows is how to analyze the potential movements on a chessboard depending on what the pieces are like and makes decisions based on that. But each match is a different match, so it doesn't learn from those matches. Then we have the limited memory, where part of it analyzes the data, the previous data, the prior data, and it's an example. Well, an example of this are the driving systems. Automatic driving systems have a limited capacity, a limited memory. Then we have two concepts that are a bit more to do with the science fiction, really. The theory of the mind and the self-awareness. Systems that go beyond that and want to actually replicate the operation of what makes us humans, basically. So, generative AI. What are the basic concepts? First of all, I don't know how many of you have used any of these generators. It's interesting that when you put AI, it tends to give the image of a woman, full of cables, wires, like you see an android looking. It's interesting how it's always associated with that image. Why? Well, if you look back at films, books, which is how these AIs have been trained on, it's very common to represent them like that. There are many films, stories where artificial intelligence is a woman. So there are many illustrations that give it that look. Therefore, I mean, what would be logical? If I put generative AI, it would should give me a server and motherboards and graphic cards, because that's really what AI is. It's not a woman with lots of wires coming out of her. So how does generative AI work? Once again, this is a very broad and lay explanation. I'm not going to go into units, convolution, and all that because it could be quite boring. But the concepts, the key concepts that we have to be able to have are the following. AIs are trained with a data set. They need a specific amount of data, many data, in order to be able to be trained. So where do we get the data from right now? Well, we get it from the internet. Mainly, we got images with descriptions, and we've used them to train the AI. Amongst those images are our own images on the social media. I don't know if you remember that we signed a contract when we accepted the social media, and yes, we have the ownership of the images, but the social media can reproduce it, and we give them a license, to an unlimited license to use that content. Although the images are ours, yes. Great. This huge amount of data is going to be analyzed. So, depending on the labels we have, it's going to transform images to pixels, and it's going to try to find metrics that help separate images into a mathematical space, which is the underlying space I'll talk about later. And if they find variables, they can help with the tasks. I'll give you an example later, so you understand what it is they do. The latent space, or it's a mathematical space. It's a space we are used to think about space in 3 or 4 dimensions if we use time. That's normal. It's our way of doing it. That's how we move, right? We've been trained like that, and we're used to working in 3D, so we know we have 3 axes, and there are variables in space. Okay, so now imagine a space that instead of 3 has 300. We are not able, we can't represent it. There is no way to represent this type of space. And what they're doing is defining different variables in the objects. And I'll give you an example in a minute. The resulting space has also significant groups. I'll talk about those significant groups, but the significant groups mean areas of similar objects, just to say it like that. And it's a space where there's dots in the space, and I can find closeness. I can interpolate their values. Generation. I start generating the image based on noise. I think the best example of this is, imagine when you're looking up at the clouds and you're looking for shapes in the clouds. You start with a space full of clouds and you try to identify. Let's see if you find a car, for instance, the shape of a car in the clouds. So your brain starts analyzing the image and tries to eliminate noise, to find shapes that could define that car. What may happen? Well, if I'm with someone who has a different culture to me, and maybe I'm thinking about a car model, and it's not the same car model they're thinking about, and we reach different results, right? Different outputs. Well, that is why the training you've given the AI matters. Depending on how you've trained it, the results will be different. The same model trained with different data sets will give you different results. And a different model with the same data set will give you different results. And the differences within a same model are normally due to differences on the noise. For instance, when you generate noise, there is a root or a seed. There's the seed of the noise that generates that. So most of these generative systems when they give you 4 images, what they're doing is generating 4 noises with different seeds, and they're generating an image. That's why they give us they may give us different results. So let's explain this further. The banana, the tree, and the smartphone. I brought a banana. I brought a smartphone. The tree I couldn't bring it because of logistical issues. So let's analyze. Let's think about how an AI thinks. Is this a banana? Is this a smartphone? And it starts thinking about values that they all have. So maybe it says, okay, in terms of size, we are within a similar size. Color, no, very far apart in terms of color. The smartphone may change colors, but they tend to be dark, and banana is yellow. The material, well, the material is different, right, as well. So it generates comparisons, and then you find that this is an example of words, and this is also interesting. These are words when you ask GPT to give you back words that are close to those concepts. This is what it's going to give you back. These are words it's going to give you. So this is also about how the LLMs are trained, large language models, as you know. So they identify the concept closeness and others are further apart. So this is a bit like a representation. We can see that the banana and the tree, there are many things that they have in common. There are things that are close to both. Why? Because the banana tree is also a very common thing. However, if we think about a smartphone, we are in very different fields. I don't know how many times you've had pictures of someone holding a smartphone and a banana. Or how many times do you talk during a conversation, and in the conversation you include smartphone and banana? I don't know how many texts have that. But normally they're not, so they are far apart. They are concepts that are very far apart. So it's going to be more difficult to generate an image with this. If someone is hungry, please don't hesitate to ask me for the banana. So these are some of the examples of me trying to generate a tree whose fruits could be smartphones in the shape of a banana. So we start with a very direct description, with a very direct prompt, and you can see the result is a tree that gives smartphones, but I don't see the bananas anywhere. What there is lots of colors, and it tends to be yellow. That's what I found when I gave it the prompt, a smartphone banana tree. So let's give it another prompt, see if it gets better. But let's be more descriptive. A tree that grows bananas shaped smartphones, banana shaped smartphones. But doesn't find that. It gives you a smartphone and it gives you the bananas, but it's not able to generate an image. If I tell an artist to do this, I think they'll give me a sketch straight away. It would take less the artist in giving me a sketch than me trying to fight with the AI here. Let's continue giving another iteration, and we move to another prompt. A tree that grows smartphones, and I define it exactly. Smartphones with the shape of a banana, but nothing. I still do not achieve the results I expect. When it tries to combine those elements, it can't give me that result. And then I put it in Spanish to see if it understands me better, and we can see the result is still far from it. So, let's go back. And let's use 2 elements. Maybe with only 2 elements, I'll be able to achieve it. So, we can see, first one is total failure. There is a banana, and there is a smartphone, and that's it. There is, it hasn't managed to find what I wanted, which is a smartphone with the shape of a banana. Here, now in the next one, we have something maybe more interesting. You can see that we are not changing the prompt that much. We said a banana-shaped smartphone, but this shape, I don't know. We liked it better when I gave it to it like this, and we are a bit closer to the final image. I've managed to look like to have a banana-shaped smartphone, more or less. At least it's like a banana coming out.
So this is what I want to talk about, the prompt crafting. It's really important to know how we communicate a concept to an AI. The order is really important, how we highlight certain aspects so that they become more important within the generation. This is an art, really, in a way, managing to understand how we transmit that information to an AI. This shows that they do not do it alone. They need some human input, some criteria. Okay, so then we have one of those things where this is really trending topic, isn't it? So where are they good at? Well, they're good at understanding how to extract patterns that define the style of the artist and then apply it into another image without copying it, just by writing their name in a prompt. It's true that they're good at establishing patterns. Now, do you think that this is a Picasso work? Really? Do you see this and think this is Picasso? Let's go to other styles such as Monet. Do you think that this is really Monet? Do you automatically think Monet? Or Velázquez? Same thing. I think that anyone who knows the works of these artists, I mean, it does have an influence, but you cannot say, well, this is, I would say that Monet came here and painted this painting. Well, the reality is that it doesn't work like that. So why does this not look like it? Well, we're using a model here, a very large model, a model where we have been trained with many different images. So in order to really get closer to Monet, we would need a fine-tuning phase. Fine-tuning is reducing that range, that result range, so that we can get closer to what it is that we want. And we've all seen, because social networks are chock-a-block full of images, I think that everything has to do with the AI. We've all seen images, this actor or that actress, with in 50,000 different positions, so 50,000 images of that actor or actress. You know, those influencers that have taken their AI pictures, it's always the same person or very similar, and it's all generated, AI generated. This has been done through a fine-tuning process. There are different methods for that to happen. You have Dream Booth, you have LoRa's, textual inversion. You have different methods to train AI and tell it, well, I want you to get closer to this. I want it to be as close to this as possible. And getting to see representations of artists, for me to believe that it's theirs, well, I have not seen that, not yet. I mean, but let's also think about what it's good for. I mean, AI is great to create memes. I mean, and I'm being really serious here. This is one of the things that will be really successful in social networks, on Instagram, Facebook, and so on, creating memes, custom memes, saying, I want a meme with my face on a boat, whatever. Or Donald Trump memes. It's wonderful. I mean, Donald Trump is a meme in and of himself, but we can do lots of variations with him. This is just a form of art. In my opinion, memes are a form of art. So for this sort of art, then yes, generative AI is going to be very efficient. Now, this is going back to the concept that I was saying previously. Seeing shapes in the clouds, I think that any person is capable of understanding what that image would look like, right? You see that when you ask this of AI, the result will not be exactly what you were expecting. Maybe this one on top could be closer, but it's not really what you would expect. And why isn't it what you expect? Well, because of the prompt. So what it expects of you is a more extensive description of what it is that you want. So it's a briefing. There has to be a full briefing. It requires an in-depth briefing so that they can get to a successful result. So one of the tools that we have is giving it an image for them to start. So if you give them an image to start, that will favor a similar result. So it gives it a bit more weight. It gives weight to an image and an interpretation of that image. So as I was saying, what they're doing is cleaning up the noise. If instead of stemming from only noise, they start from something that has already a basic shape, AI will use that as a basis in order to reach to that which we are looking for, that which we want. So this is what I wanted to tell you. So saying that it could replace an artist, that AI can replace an artist, is eliminating lots of different parts and pieces of what it really means to work in art and what an artist artwork is. We are giving all of the value to the crafting. I mean, the value of doing it in and of itself, and we're forgetting about what the artist is and what his or her criteria is, what his or her decision making is, what their background is. Because the works of great painters are linked to their historic context, their personal context. There is much more than just that. It's not just a technique that they worked, because if they did pointillisme, it's not just that, it's everything that's behind it. And that is to be applied to everything, anything, any content we want to generate, such as scripts. I don't know if you've tried to ask for a script from an AI. The result is, well, I don't know. I personally don't think it's great. I mean, there have, as a brainstorming tool, maybe. As a brainstorming tool, it could be interesting. But with regards to the final results, the things that I have seen, well, there's something missing. Same can be said about AI-generated art. I don't know if it happens to you, but when you're doing when you're looking at the feed of your social networks, your social media, what really catches my eye is the noise you can find in those images. Sometimes I lack a reading capacity. It's like I'm saturated with information. It's too much. It's like I'm being bombarded with information, and when you see an image that was created by an artist, they're usually more clear in their reading. So once again, you cannot tell me. I mean, yesterday I was here with Carlos Salgado and Jonathan Catalan. I cannot imagine AI replacing them. I am lucky enough to work with them, and I cannot even think of them being replaced. Why is that? Well, because the most important part is that decision-making process. That's the most important part. Okay. Now, talking about decision-making, let's put AI on steroids. So we were used to a certain series of models that were encapsulated in I have learned up to January 2022. I don't know anything beyond January 2022, or I have learned with this range of images, and I do not know anything beyond that. So this has some subtleties that are quite limited, obviously, because the world evolves, or maybe the other way around, depending on who says it. So we need to have so for an AI to be useful, it needs to have a range of actions that it can do. So these new models are implementing more capacities for AI. So the process natural language will know this, obviously, understanding the context, but now you can actually download documents into it and ask them to analyze this or that document. I mean, big documents with more content than that which we could analyze previously. And vision, computation vision. So what I want is for you to analyze what I'm giving you, and I want it to be capable of analyzing it and respond or answering and telling me what this image does. So these are not new systems. What we're doing now is connecting them to one another. What we're doing is this connection phase. So the computation vision is something that has been there for a very long time. We have been using it for a very long time. It is a narrow AI, so everything that we're using are different pieces, parts and pieces that we are hooking together so that this works. Voice recognition, same thing. So now they can work with text and audio. What does this have? What does this make it powerful? Well, transcription and voice assistance, and I'm sure you've all seen those videos with Arnold Schwarzenegger singing songs, videos where actors have been dubbed, respecting their voice and their tone of voice. They still have a bit of a mechanical point to them, but they're there. So automatic translation, that is reaching a level that is quite spectacular. There are some systems that are replicating a voice in a different language. So a 5-minute video, it takes them 7 minutes to translate it. So that is actually getting quite close to streaming, to being able to do it live. So now you could do it with a bit of a delay, but very, very soon we will be capable of translating a live streaming. I don't know if you've seen this, but many of these things have to do with social media. So it's all thought for YouTubers, I'd say. So this is amazing for them. And summarizing and generating multimodal content. It can generate image descriptions, video summaries, and enriched content that combines text, image, and sound. So you're already seeing that. Software such as Adobe, Premiere, they're starting to introduce that sort of implementation. So they are capable of generating the addition of a video. They can edit a video for you. And that is quite powerful. And the last thing, I always say the last thing, but in 2 weeks' time, there will be a last thing. So in 6 months, this talk is completely dated. It's obsolete. So the arrival of Agent Smith. So the power of the use of agents. What's an agent? So every time you're interacting with GPT, you're interacting with an agent, okay? So you can define their personality or a series of roles. You interact with an agent. But MetaGPT has introduced in the last presentations this thing, which is the capacity to create different GPT agents that can interact among them. So each agent has its own profile and a knowledge area and a series of tasks that they have to fulfill. So this is an example of a software company. So we have a GPT agent that acts as a boss, another as product manager, another as an architect, software architect. Then you have the project manager that will check this other part's work, then the engineer, and then someone or some agent that is dedicated to QA. So this is really powerful. This work system is the one that will revolutionize productivity and our productivity capacity. So you should maybe take a look at this and look at the examples, because this is already producing games, websites, so it can do all of these things. Most important thing is that a person is here. A person is supervising all of these things. So instead of having, something that we did previously, we run tests, we would talk to people and say, do everything, and the results would not work. So what they decided was, okay, let's see how it is done in the real world. We will divide it into different roles that will make different decisions, and then we will have a person supervising all of those decisions, and we have seen that that works quite well. So after this introduction, I could seem terrifying at times. Let's talk about AI and animation and what are the advantages. One of the things that I believe is trending topic as well, even during on the Oscar Scala, is this. Animation is considered a genre by the general public, the general audience. So these are the audiences that it's produced, and they're all more or less the same style, aren't they? So I'm sure that you've heard lots of directors say this, cinematographers say that the main complaint in the planet is, why is animation considered a genre? Why do we consider animation a genre? Well, mainly because animation is an industry. Animation is an industry. We cannot forget about the fact that it is an industry. It is an industry where there are people who invest and then they expect return. So what happens? Well, animation is expensive nowadays. It involves lots of people. There are many things that are not very efficient. So what usually happens is, well, I have an idea for a project here, so we will start analyzing the production costs. So how much is this going to cost me, this project? So we start looking for financing and distribution. Let's talk to the big studios, to streamers. Let's see who has the money. Where do I get the money from? And what happens then? We'll have a stopper, obviously, because they will say, listen, just a second, what's the audience for this project? What is the potential audience for this? Because I need to know how I can get the maximum return for my investment. And why? Because this is an industry. This is an industry. So when we're talking about certain figures, certain numbers, the people who invest demand return. It's not just people who adore art. They want return from their investment. So what happens is that since I want loads of return, what I'm going to do is try and find the bigger audience I can get. So I want a movie that will have the 4 quadrants, which are I needed to work with kids, teenagers, family, and so on. So if the idea does not cover big enough target, then I will not do it. So this is a vicious circle, because in the end you will not give an opportunity to certain projects that might not be 4 quadrant projects, but that could triumph, that could be successful. So one of the processes that are taking place right now is that in order to play safe, companies are looking for ideas that have already been tested. And where do they test them? On video games. Arcane is the best example I could give you, but Arcane was not a risk. There were no risks with Arcane, because Arcane has a fan base that is so solid that there's no risk whatsoever. So what's the problem here? So they will ask for an IP that is completely tested, and if not, they will not do it. They will not produce it. So we find ourselves in a situation where we're blocked, and since we always have the same situation, it's a genre instead of a technique, because animation is an interpretation technique, really. So what are the advantages, and what can we use AI for? How can we help get out of this paradigm? Well, in the process automation, an improvement of communication and analysis of the production itself. And all of that obviously entails a reduction of production time. And what will happen then? Well, we will have more IPs, more projects. We will have the possibility to greenlight more projects. That will have a public niche that can be smaller, but since the risk of investment is lower, because we will invest less money, then we will be more ready to invest in those IPs. So from an artist standpoint as well, it's really interesting to consider that up to not very long ago, you would analyze the number of projects you could work on during your career. You could work on a limited amount of projects, 20 for instance, so that would help us participate in more projects, because they will be produced in a faster way, so you will be able to collaborate and participate in more projects, more than you would have previously. So these are a few examples of process automatization that we will have thanks to AI, and some are already there. So I'm not talking about science fiction here, that already exists. So we'll have trained agents that will assist artists and will free them from mechanic tasks, such as the optimization of models and retopologies. So that would be one of the things that agents could do. And this is something that takes an enormous amount of time. And if you have an assistant, actually, this is mechanic work. There are very few people I know that like doing that. So optimizing a model, that's not something that people like to do. I don't know anyone who has fun doing that. Now, to automatically assign bones and skinning. So this is for rigging. So we have lots of support in rigging, which are very technical parts. You know that this is one of the terrors of producers. Rigging is something that that gives nightmares because it's very complex. It's not very well understood. So there's usually a jam there in the production process, and there are always complaints in that point. So all of this could help simplify, and the rigging work will go from being something very technically perceived to being something that has a higher artistic charge. Then we will have interpolation systems. Lots of animators, lots of illustrators are interested in the pose, the timing, but having to clean curves and so on, that's a process that I don't know any animators who like that or who look forward to doing that. So if you had an assistant that could do that for you, who could clean those curves and do those interpolations without having to spend so many hours doing that, then animators could be focused on doing what's really important, which is acting. So all of that technical part, they would forget about it. They would forget about this Euler blockers and so on. They would simply focus on the things that interest them. And the part that they're interested in is the narrative part, the artistic part. Now, textures, generating procedural textures. That's already there. I mean, people are already using it, but that could accelerate all of the processes, all of the shading processes. Now, procedural systems. You'll have seen videos where we can generate buildings using different procedural systems. You can do it with Houdini, with Blender, with whatever model system. So you already have solutions that make proposals for those sorts of solutions. They accelerate things, and they provide you with a template that you can work on and that you can modify to generate procedural systems that are a bit more complex. Lighting optimization and lights positioning. So there's AI, depending on how the lights are set, they can tell you, well, this could be more efficient if you were to set the lights this way or that other way with these settings. And they can also offer different choices in function of, I mean, depending on a reference that you give them. So they can tell you, well, I could have a key light here, a fill here. So they propose things to you. Then you have to decide which one is the right solution. But once again, I'm going back to the same thing. So AI is a great co-pilot here. The decisions are made by us, and the AI is a great co-pilot. Denoisers and upscaling, that has been around for a couple of years now. So on the daily basis, denoise poria are very much working in image generation, because what we're doing is just eliminating noise. So this image generating AIs are just erasing noise from images. So this can be applied automatically, and that is perfect just to erase noise from our images. And the same thing can be said about upscaling. So what is the advantage with all of this? Well, this is democratizing things when rendering a project, because you can think about working with a lower resolution, lower res, and these denoiser and upscaling systems are going to work well. You will have the output that you need in the end. Now, color grading as well. AI-assisted color grading. This will allow you to tell it how you want to do it, and the AI can offer options and can correct things. And it could say, well, careful because on this shot, for instance, you lost this or that, and it gives you that sort of, provides you with that sort of help. Now, TA and TD agents, so technical departments. This is an area where you really suffer during a production. These are profiles that are quite difficult to find, and usually these are the core of any technical department. They are responsible for the whole machine to work. So trying to find methods to free that backbone of its task and make it more efficient. So I don't know how many of you have experience in production, but usually the ratio artist to technical person is around 10 to 1. So every 10 artists, there is one technical guy, and I'm talking about a production that is filled with technical profiles, but you could find yourself in that situation. So we have to find ways so that that sort of department is not saturated. So the best way to do it is, for instance, you can have an assistant that could help you in reviewing scenes or in debugging, because sometimes when you talk to TDs, they will tell you, well, 80% of my time is I spend it solving silly little things. These are silly little things. I mean, to me, they're silly. Maybe for the artist, they're not silly, but it's because there is a lack of technical knowledge. So it'd be fantastic often for artists to be able to just talk to an agent and talk to an agent in their own machine and say, this does not work. Can you tell me what could be the possible solutions for this problem I'm facing, so the artist can try them out, and if that doesn't work, then you can scale it up to the next person, which would be the technical department. But at least the first swipe could be done with an AI agent, and that really will solve a very high percentage of problems that we have during production.
Ayuda en la generación de código.
They generate code as well. They can help us with that. So that's another of the things that come up when we need to work. I mean, you must not forget that the code is written. The codes have been written. It's not that when you have a programmer in your studio, it doesn't mean that you're going to reinvent the wheel. Normally, what they're working on is, well, they're working with different libraries, documentation, papers that come from other people. And what they do is setting up or providing what you need with that information, with all those papers. So having someone that can help you generate code, a code generator assistant will help you go much faster. But will it do it on its own? No. They'll have to review it, test it, decide what's the best with whatever the AI proposes. But this could be something that could also entail a very large efficiency. IT assistance. IT assistance many times is totally overwhelmed with requests. And then improvements in the quality processes, such as, for instance, analysis of frames to search for interpenetrations, or the correction of noise and fireflies, the review of color. For accuracy, for quality is really important. So that is something that they could check. You could check that everything's okay. Another area we talk about is something that helps you communicate with production. Normally, the people in production are quite overwhelmed with work, and most of the time they are planning, creating budget quotes. They're doing production reports that take forever, and what they're doing is to analyze a database, check status, and send them to a customer. That's it. if we give them assistance in that, they will be able to focus instead of wasting their time. Obviously, they're not wasting their time because it's part of their work. But instead of writing reports, they will be focusing on checking the status of production, talking to the artist. And a little percentage of their time will be reviewing the reports and sending them. But we move them into doing what they should be doing more. Same as the assistance in task allocation and task follow-up. It's, once again, they're overwhelmed with this type of things. So if we have an assistant, the artist can just talk to the assistant, and then it only scales up. It escalates it only when necessary. Well, it will be very efficient. Cost prediction or cost outlook and cash flow control. Well, this takes time to know how much this is going to cost, etc. If I've got help for that, then the work of production will be much better, right? So, and also agents for the artist that allow you to know the status of a production. Sometimes you don't know because of the lack of communication and the lack of, this was done and I didn't realize. If I have people and I can ask them what happened with this frame yesterday, with this shot, and I don't have to go into Shotgun or any other tracking software to find who gave it what score. No, I have someone who can do that for me. I don't have to get up and go to talk to the producer and interrupt the work. This is something that is very much in our discuss. Could we try an AI to have a specific look? Well, as we said, there's loads of frames. The problem with a feature film is that you may have enough data to train the AI, yes, but then you have the over-adjustment. What's over-adjustment? If you if you get a film, you take a certain amount of frames, and then you think, the amount of frames is too similar. So what would you do with an AI? If you use it, it will replicate those frames. So that's what we call over-adjustment. So this is something I want to go quickly over. I'm not a lawyer, okay? But this is one of the most important parts that I think we need to be talking about. And I think it's urgent that we do that. It's what we call the gray areas of legality. We started using AI and it's not legislated yet. It seems this is not progressing a lot. But what we need first is to have a set of rules to be able to use it. So anyone who wishes to use now AI is in a gray area full of nuances. Can you register an image generated by an AI, for instance? Well, case by case right now. Can we train an AI with material that's protected with copyright? Well, the fact that a person could read lots of books and watch lots of films to work, well, what's the difference there? But we're not talking about person, obviously. If in a prompt you textually mention the name of an artist, is that plagiarism? Should we review the copyright contracts with artists? When you are an artist, you give away the copyright for that work, but there has to be a clause so that they cannot be used for AI. Maybe this is something that artists need to think about. And about the final thoughts, some final thoughts. I think that here's about content generation. We've all seen Matrix. I don't know, I would love to live in the Matrix or to see the Matrix, to be able to go into a metaverse and have the capacity to see all of that, okay? Without the aid of an AI, that's not possible. Those concepts of metaverse, going into the metaverse and being in a metaverse, I don't know, like being in Spider-Verse. I would like to feel like I'm in Spider-Verse, which is not a video game, but a metaverse. With its skins and its things and all the look. We need that for that. There's new content that could be mentioned. We're very much used to a type of content, linear content, traditional content that doesn't have to disappear. But I also think that this could open the path for new ways of content, new ways of narrative. And so that such a narrative that you can follow the story of each of the characters, that you can produce that. No, let's say, I want to know the point of view of this character. And that's not cinema, that's something else. It's a new narrative model that opens up possibilities that must be thought of when we think about different content. And I think I have to come to an end now. Well, it'll be great if we could have some time for questions, actually. So, well, if you have any questions, this is the time. Throw me things, whatever. My colleague there. Hi. It was really interesting, your talk. Thank you very much. I'm going to talk about the legal aspects. You just went quickly over them. What do you think about all these demands that are coming up, these lawsuits? About plagiarism, copying the artist content. It's like AI. It's like you take an artist, you take the work and you copy them and you do a collage. So how can that endanger the future? A very promising future, yes. But what do we do? What about if they think, okay, let's forbid this and you cannot use this type of tools? And then there's another question that has to do with artificial intelligence that, I mean, given that this is going so quickly, first the images were a bit abrupt and not very good, especially static and in 2D, but it has now generated images in 3D or video even. That's what's the leading edge, or interpolation. So you put key programs and it has a fluent interpolation. This is something new. What do you think about that? Thank you. What about the legal aspects? But these language models, LMMs, when we go into the other LLMs, sorry, the large language models, if we go into seeing what the artificial intelligence is doing, is giving value to some words, seeing likelihoods of what will be the next word. Okay? For instance, I feel well, or I feel happy. It's just analyzes likelihoods. He says it's more likely that this would happen. If you give it a prompt, you modify those likelihoods, but it's still the same. In the end, they work a bit like us, like our brains work. It's interesting, when you give a long list of words to someone, they think about the beginning, they remember the beginning and the end. In the case of many GPT prompts, they give a lot more importance to what's at the beginning and at the end. So if we escalate this to a legal field, and as I said before, I'm not a lawyer, but my opinion is, can we train an AI with copyright material? I think so, because we are constantly being trained with copyright material, right? The thing is how we can legislate its use. For instance, with a fee, you may have to pay a royalty, so that if you use these books, these films, these images, you have to pay a royalty. for using them. That's a potential solution. I think they're very expert people that could work on this and could give us solutions. I'm not a lawyer, so there are several things I don't dare answer. In terms of interpolation, so far, given how the models work right now, that's quite limited. But I think it will be solved in the future. Right now, most of the models don't understand about temporality or timeliness. They don't say, okay, so this image comes before that one. They are not being trained yet, but they will. So that leap will come. There are many videos in the social media that you can see that it jumps from one style to the next. I think there's people working on this to solve that. How long will it take them? I don't know. I really don't know, honestly, but it will come. Because part of this is a need. It's part of the needs that you have to use it efficiently.
Hola, muchas gracias. Muy interesante la charla. Yo te quería preguntar a nivel...
I would like to ask you, from a technical perspective, how are AIs looked at in the industry? What tool would you use? For instance, the Blender. Do you use external models, plugins? So what would be the dynamic here? I think I got lost in your question. What do you mean? What Blender models are you talking about? See, for instance, the examples that you gave us. For any task that you mentioned, you would use an AI model for those tasks. Would it be with the Blender tools or with other tools? I think this has to do with the large multimodal models I mentioned before, the LMMs. In fact, this week in GPT-4, you can ask it to browse the web. Before you couldn't do that. Now you can say, can you browse? So my initial image, if I asked ChatGPT now, they would find it. It would give me back a picture or a potential picture of myself, or maybe it would send me some options. And what does that mean? Well, what they're trying to do, and it's been done, is that these models will be able to communicate with the OS and with software. So what you would have is a window. I mean, you make it's as if you call that model, and the model would give you a solution for whatever. There are still many steps that need to be fixed. It can analyze images, but because of how it breaks them down, for instance, if we wanted to work with 3D types, it has to understand that image. We have to give them that information, that those points in space represent an image, how the image is represented, and there's a series set of steps, but people are working on them to understand them. People are working on transforming those points models. But when you go into topology itself, the 3D topology, then well, it doesn't know it yet, but it will. It's a question of time. We need to know what steps are missing. But really, it's going to be an assistant that we will have in your software. You will have a GPT assistant, and maybe you have several. Maybe you have an expert specialized on code for that software, or another agent for shading or shading. And this expert, there is going to be like different agents for different topics or things. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much, Ramón. A big round of applause for Ramón, please.
Ha sido un placer.
It was a pleasure to have you with us this year. It really was. Thank you very much. It was really interesting. Thank you. And I'm sorry I stopped you there, but because we wanted to ask questions. So we're going to have a 3-minute break just for a technical change to get to know Raúl García, to bring him here. He's going to talk about a storyboard, how to do a storyboard. Thank you.